Welcome back to Q Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and yes, episode 6 of our season 1 rewatch is underway, and we get to see the death of Harry. Well, again. Or do we? More on that in a moment. But this episode was pretty decent, and instead of me going through the normal recap, I'm just going to talk about some of the information that just happened and an overall, arching aspect of this episode. So, in this episode, we essentially have a few different storylines on Ignis. We get Sal and Gale and Tellum Bond, who are essentially debating, and Tellum is trying to understand where the Prime Radiant is hidden, and he's using a lot of mind tricks to convince Sal and Gale to give her that information. Meanwhile, she actually has Harry tied up and is torturing him by drowning him. We then get Day, who's essentially announced that he's married the people of Trantor, and obviously the rest of the galaxy, that is going to be with Queen Sereth. And this is just one of the few things that is going to tick people off. And then of course we see a young Harry on Helicon, and of course we learn where he meets Yana, who he loves and trusts. But unfortunately she dies, and then Harry puts himself on a trajectory to become that vengeful god that Polly spoke about in the last episode. So one of the first details that I want to touch on here is about Harry. Now, not only in this episode, but we do get to see the prototype of the Prime Radiant, which is always great to see. He does mention that it was in fact Yana's idea to put the device into a quantum mechanism, and he does mention in this episode to Sal that essentially confirms that the Radiant is the same one, just existing in two places at any one time. And as I've said in one of my previous episodes about quantum mechanics, this is actually where, it could exist simultaneously anywhere. And Harry could have it appear anywhere that he wants it to be, which could of course alter the direction of season 3. Because with Demerzel having the Radiant, Harry was always observing what the other Harry was doing. So what if now Demerzel can observe what Harry is doing, and vice versa? So the information that she is looking at and how she's using it, he could also see that and how to potentially prevent a disaster. Because of course this is a quantum device, so it does work both ways. But Harry essentially learned that he was being watched by Empire, and they tried to shoot him down. And in doing so, his love interest, Yana, is actually killed. And you realise that through the necklace that he shared with Yana, connecting them to both her and her unborn baby, that this is where he realises that Yana did die. So of course, this takes him on a revengeful path and ends up killing Dr. Taj with the help of the Moonstrikes. But it was fascinating here that when he mentioned about the Moonstrikes, that it was something I overlooked the first time round, and he actually mentioned that the moon of Helicon is within the same atmosphere as the planet, meaning that technically the Moonstrikes can reach the moon, the surface of it, and graze. And it was mentioned a couple of times in this episode about the gravity on Helicon. So obviously the Moonstrikes need to jump off that cliff to get the momentum and the speed to reach the surface. And I just thought that this was just a really interesting fact. And the next point I want to talk about is with Day and Sereth. So obviously Day announces in front of his brothers and Demerzel that he's going to be making Sereth the new Empress of Trantor, meaning that there is now an end to the Galactic dynasty. But he also referenced about the last Galactic Empress, which was Cleon I's mother, and it was a nice homage that he played to her here, and I quite enjoyed that. But of course Sereth takes it upon herself to give a little bit of a talk to the people of the galaxy, and this ultimately annoys Day. And does doing that ruin some of her chances about finding out the information that she needs? Did she really need to do that? Or has she shot herself in the foot? And one of the final talking points that I want to mention is about the main overarching story with Tellum Bond trying to torture Harry and get the information that she needs, and of course manipulate the mind of Sal and Gale. Now, if you notice throughout this episode, there are a lot of shots that are quite blurry, just slightly out of focus around the edges to be more precise. And it's quite noticeable in the last moment we see before Harry is then taken to the water where he's talking to Sal. But if you re-watch the episode and you look carefully, and see these blurred lines, that's ultimately where Bond is manipulating what they are seeing, such as when the beggar flies off or when they're fishing on that rock. And there's a little bit of conversation that's being had, but I just find it that, no one's talking, everyone's using their minds. So it's like Harry said, how can you trust your own mind in a place like this? And I think that's so true for this episode, but it does really get me thinking, and how much does she actually know? How strong is her power, and what is her overall goal? I mean, she mentioned a few times that she just wants people like her to be the ones that survive, and the ones that are abusive and murderous to be killed off. But surely I don't think that's it. I think that she is also, like Harry, a bit of a godlike complex. But of course, we know by the end that things do switch around a little bit, and we know that what they're thinking now actually isn't quite true. But I just find the whole storyline of this really complex and potentially full of a few little plot holes here and there. But now the final thing that I do want to touch on, and I know it's coming up in the next one, is Hober Mello making his way to the home swarm. Obviously through Harry's coordinates, and this is where he meets some of the spacers. And if I remember correctly, they use the spacers to ultimately cut cords with Empire and prevent them from having jump technology, and ultimately escaping. But if my theory is right about the rings around Trantor being a huge jump ship to move a planet through space, then do they need the spacers? Is Trantor somehow connected to the home swarm where many of those spacers are? And when the time comes, Trantor will be activated as this giant jump planet and ultimately take all that energy and that power from the spacers. Now, yes, it's just me, kind of rolling with a bit of a wild theory here, but entertain me, please. Now, overall, guys, it wasn't a bad episode. I think it was really interesting to see some of the great details about Harry's backstory. His upbringing on Helicon and how he used math at an early age to start predicting some of the trends with the masses. And I also think that the whole storyline with Ignis is fascinating. And of course, in this episode, we got to see Brother Constant and Polly, who ended up getting captured on Terminus and gearing up for the next 2 episodes before my ultimate favourite, which is the attack on Trantor. Now, I'm looking forward to rewatching that episode, of course, but as always, I'm going to throw this over to you. So what did you make of this episode? Did you enjoy the story of Bond, or did, like me, you find it a little bit complex at times? And did you appreciate the backstory that we had on Harry and Helicon? So of course, let me know in the comments. Please do hit that subscribe button. And again, really love your support and engagement on the channel. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time with something new.